At my sister's black tie wedding in Boston, my father took the microphone and announced to 200 guests that she couldn't even find a date. Then he pushed me into the courtyard fountain. I remember the water first. Not as an idea of cold but as something violent and immediate, so cold it stole my breath before I even understood I was falling. My body hit the surface and then dropped through it like the air itself had given up on holding me up. The marble edge scraped my palm as I went under, and the sound of the splash echoed off the Fairmont Boston courtyard walls. For a moment there was nothing. Then laughter. That part matters. Not the fall but the laughter that followed it, as if what had just happened was entertainment. Before I go further, you need to understand something about me. I am not a dramatic person. I never have been. In a family that treats spectacle like oxygen, I've always been the one who stays quiet, observes, absorbs. I don't cry in public. I don't argue in restaurants. I don't make scenes in airports or return meals or raise my voice when I should. I take things in, process them alone, and move on. So when I stood up from that fountain, soaked through a $1,400 navy silk dress, mascara streaking down my face in black lines, surrounded by 100 guests still staring, some still laughing, and I said very calmly, "Remember this moment, Dad." I meant it. He laughed. Like I had told a joke. Like I was still the version of me he could ignore. He had no idea what was coming. But I should go back. This didn't start in Boston. It started 7 months earlier in a conference room in Singapore at 11 p.m. I was leading a live call with 4 sovereign wealth funds, closing the final structure of a $2.3 billion infrastructure acquisition. 16 months of work sitting on my screen in clean columns and legal precision. That's when my assistant Marcus knocked once quietly and slid a cream envelope onto the table. He didn't speak. He never interrupted unless it mattered. I glanced at it between slides. Allison Campbell and James Whitmore request the honor of your presence. I flipped it face down and continued speaking. I wasn't surprised she was getting married. I was surprised they thought I would care enough to be formally invited, together with family, as if that phrase had ever applied to me. My family didn't really include me unless there was a reason. I was 12 when I first understood that. My sister, Allison, was everything I wasn't. Bright, social, effortless. The kind of daughter who fit neatly into my father's idea of legacy. My father, Robert Campbell, a Beacon Hill tax attorney, coached her lacrosse, attended her recitals, introduced her at his firm events as his pride. Me. When I was mentioned at all, I was the other one. Allison was easy to love in public. I was easy to overlook. I don't say that as complaint. I say it as fact. After Singapore, I didn't fly home. I moved through London, then Hong Kong. I became Chief Strategy Officer at Reed Capital Partners, a global firm managing tens of billions in assets. My life became contracts, acquisitions, time zones, and numbers that ended in too many zeros to feel real. I didn't tell my parents about any of it. Not the promotions. Not the offices. Not my marriage. 3 years earlier, I married Nathan Reed in a private ceremony in Oregon with 14 people present. My parents weren't among them. It wasn't anger that kept me from telling them. It was absence. There had been no foundation left to inform. Nathan was the one who finally convinced me to go to the wedding. "You'll regret not going," he said from Tokyo, his face softened by the screen. "She's still your sister. She hasn't called me in 4 years. And you're still hers," he replied. Then after a pause, "I'll be there. I'll fly in." Nathan Reed is the kind of man people underestimate because he makes it look easy not to need attention. He built companies in his 20s, sold them before 30, and still carries his own luggage. He remembers names. He listens fully when you speak. And for 3 years he has been the only person who ever looked at me like I wasn't something to correct. So I went. Alone. The Fairmont Boston was glowing that October night. Gold light, falling leaves, everything staged to look like permanence. I checked into a suite, took my time getting ready, and wore a dress I had bought in Milan and never used. Navy silk. Structured. Expensive in a way that didn't need explanation. I looked at myself in the mirror and left. The first people I saw were my extended family. They always arrive like weather. Predictable, unavoidable. My cousin Rebecca spotted me first. He hugged me like a measurement. "You came alone," she said. "How brave." My aunt commented on my haircut like it was a diagnosis. My mother scanned me the way she always does. Quick, critical, efficient. That color washes you out, she said. You should have called me. For what? I replied. Advice on attending my sister's wedding? She didn't answer that. My seat was table 19. Near the back. Near people who didn't know me well enough to care. An elderly aunt leaned toward me and asked if I was one of the other girls. I told her I was the other daughter. She paused. Oh, she said. I didn't know there was another one. The ceremony itself was beautiful in the way expensive things often are. Perfect, distant, slightly unreal. Allison looked radiant. James cried when he saw her. For a moment even I forgot the distance between us. Then the reception began. And my father found the microphone. He didn't ask for attention. He assumed it. I don't know if he realized the audio carried through the entire ballroom and courtyard. I don't know if he cared that cameras were still rolling. I only know that he began speaking about Allison, how she had always done everything right, how she had never disappointed him, how she had even managed to find a husband. Then he looked toward me. And smiled. That smile was my warning. He said something about family, about success, about some of us being luckier than others. People laughed. The kind of laughter that waits for permission. Then he walked over. And pushed me. The fountain wasn't deep, but it didn't need to be. It only needed to humiliate. When I came up, gasping, shaking, I heard applause. Not for me. For him. For the moment. That's when I stood. Water dripping from every seam of my dress. Hair stuck to my face. Mascara running in steady black lines. And I said it again, louder this time. Remember this moment, Dad. He laughed again. But behind him the ballroom doors had just opened. And everything was about to change. My father has always believed that what happens to me doesn't quite register as real. Not in the way it should. She couldn't even find a date. His voice came through the speakers, amplified cleanly across the courtyard. The reception noise softened in response. Glasses paused midair, conversations thinning as attention shifted. 200 guests slowly turned, like a single organism deciding where to look next. I mean, he continued, eyes fixed on me, 32 years old. There was again. Not anger. Not even disappointment. Amusement. The same expression he used when I was a child and said something he found inconveniently earnest. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Not all of it, just enough. The kind of laughter that needs permission to exist. A man in a tailored suit had framed it as humor, so it became acceptable. My mother covered her mouth as if she might be hiding a smile. My sister didn't bother pretending. He stepped off the stage. Still holding the microphone. Each step toward me tightened the air in the courtyard. People shifted slightly, instinctively, the way they do when they sense something is about to become either embarrassing or entertaining. You've always been the disappointment, he said almost conversationally. Always the failure. Always an embarrassment to the Campbell name. Now he was close. Close enough that I could see the faint satisfaction in his face. The comfort of a man who has never once had to consider the weight of his words landing back on him. I didn't move. I want to be precise about that. I didn't step back. I want to be very clear, I said quietly. I'm not moving, Dad. That's when his hands hit my shoulders. Not accidental. Not clumsy. Intentional. A decision made in public. He shoved. The fountain caught me at the edge first, marble biting into my hip and palm, and then the water swallowed everything else. It was freezing, sharp enough to erase breath, thought, reflex. My lungs locked the moment I hit it, like my body had been switched off without permission. Silk clung to me instantly, heavy and ruined, dragging me down before I could even orient myself. And for a second, just a second, there was no sound. Then I surfaced. Gasping. Disoriented. Fully aware that I was soaked in front of 200 people who were not moving toward me. Not my mother. Not my sister. Not a single cousin or family friend or person who had once held me as a child and told me I was loved. Only watching. Only reacting. Some still laughing. I pushed myself up on the marble edge. My heel had snapped somewhere underwater. Mascara ran in dark streaks down my face, mixing with fountain water and humiliation I could feel but not yet name. The dress was ruined. The moment was not. I stood anyway. And I looked at him. Then at my mother. Then at Allison. Her hand was over her mouth. I still couldn't tell if it was shock or something closer to laughter that hadn't decided what it wanted to be yet. I wiped the water from my face slowly, deliberately, like I had all the time in the world. Remember this moment, I said. Quiet, controlled, exact. The courtyard changed after that. Not loudly, not visibly, but something in the air shifted, like a line had been crossed that no one had agreed to name. My father's smile faltered for the first time. Not much. Just enough. I turned and walked back into the hotel, water dripping behind me across the marble floor like a trail no one wanted to acknowledge. I didn't run. I didn't look back. Because I already knew what came next. This wasn't improvisation. It was timing. And I had been preparing for it longer than anyone in that courtyard understood. Upstairs I called Marcus. Confirm schedule, I said. Then I texted Nathan. He shoved me into a fountain. I'm fine. Stay ready. His reply came almost immediately. I saw it from the terrace. My team is in position. Say the word. I stared at it for a moment. Then I typed back. Stand down. Not yet. I changed into a second dress. Navy again. Different cut. Lighter fabric, easier movement. I had packed it because I had known my family long enough to anticipate not just the insult, but the stagecraft of it. My hands were steady as I reapplied makeup. No shaking. No rush. No breakdown waiting to happen. Just execution. At 6:47 p.m. I went back downstairs. The cocktail hour had resumed like nothing had happened. That was the part that always fascinates me about crowds like this. The speed at which they decide reality is optional. My father was near the bar, louder now, performing charm. My mother was in conversation. My sister was being guided toward the ballroom like a centerpiece returning to its intended place. I took my seat at table 19. Dorothy leaned toward me. Are you one of the Wellington girls? Not tonight, I said. Then the ballroom doors opened. 2 men entered first. Not staff. Not guests. They scanned the room the way professionals do, mapping exits, sightlines, tension points without needing to be told why. My father noticed them immediately. He stepped forward. This is a private event, he said sharply. Corporate reception is in the West Wing. They didn't respond. They didn't even acknowledge him. They were looking past him. Because behind them the room was already changing shape. And then Nathan Reed walked in. Charcoal suit. No tie. Sleeves slightly loosened from travel. The kind of presence that doesn't announce itself because it doesn't need to. He didn't hurry. He didn't hesitate. He crossed the room like it had already been arranged for him. People moved without being asked. 60 feet became 15 seconds. And then he was there. His eyes found mine instantly. Meredith, he said. And just like that the rest of the room stopped mattering. He kissed me once. Brief, familiar, grounding. Then he turned. My mother was standing 3 feet away. Campbell. Nathan's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. I'm Nathan Reed. Meredith's husband. The word husband landed differently than anything else had that night. I saw my mother change before she even spoke. It wasn't a reaction exactly. It was a collapse of certainty. A stillness so complete it looked like she had been interrupted mid-thought and forgotten how to continue. Husband, she whispered. 3 years next month, Nathan replied almost politely. We would have invited you to the wedding, but it was very small. I hope you understand. I watched her try to process it. Not emotionally, logically. The way she always did. Nathan Reed. Reed Capital Partners. The name she had likely seen before, half registered on financial pages she never thought would matter to her. Her hands tightened slightly at her sides. My father pushed forward through the crowd. He had heard just enough to know he was losing control of the room, not enough to understand how completely. His face had gone that familiar shade of red, the one I remembered from childhood. Not anger, not yet. Something worse. Panic disguised as authority. This some kind of stunt? He said loudly. Too loudly. Hiring actors to turn a wedding into a scene? Nathan turned slightly toward him. Only slightly. Mr. Campbell, he said. The tone dropped half a step. That was all it took. The room went quiet in sections like silence spreading through water. I watched it happen in real time. People recalibrating, deciding whether they were witnessing embarrassment or something more dangerous. I was outside, Nathan continued evenly. I saw you push your daughter into a fountain. No anger. No theatrics. Just precision. I heard everything you said into that microphone. Boss. My security team was already in place, he added. They were ready to intervene. Then quieter. Meredith told them not to. That landed harder than anything else. A few people stopped breathing. She didn't want to ruin her sister's wedding, Nathan said, even after what you did. He let that sit for a moment. I suggest you sit with that. My father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. And then the doors opened again. This time it wasn't silence that entered first. It was presence. Sophia Chen stepped in like the room had been expecting her all along. She didn't hurry. She didn't scan. She simply arrived. Director Campbell, she said, looking directly at me. The title cut through the room in a way nothing else had. A ripple started immediately. Whispers, phones lifting, people searching names mid-sentence, trying to attach meaning to what they were suddenly witnessing. I apologize for the interruption, she continued. Meridian's closing timeline has been accelerated. Singapore FSA wants final documentation before Monday. Behind her stood Daniel Park, Reed Capital's general counsel. And suddenly the room understood even before they fully understood. Someone at the back said it out loud. Forbes. She was on Forbes last month. Another voice corrected, quieter. No, that was Reed. That's him. The number came next. 12 billion. It wasn't said like fact. It was said like disbelief trying to become math. My mother reached for the back of a chair. Both hands. Like she needed something solid to stay upright. My father didn't move. Not this time. That, more than anything, told me the shift was real. Because my father was always movement. Gestures, interruptions, control performed through volume. Now he was still. Allison was looking at me. Not through me. Not past me. At me. As if I had just stepped out of a version of myself she had been given years ago and forgotten to question. The disappointment. The failure. The one who couldn't even find a date. She had never looked past it because it was easier not to. And now she couldn't unsee it. I didn't smile. I didn't soften. I just held her gaze long enough to make it impossible to pretend I hadn't. Then I looked away. Meredith, wait. My father's voice broke at the edges. That was new. I stopped, but I didn't turn yet. The room was completely still now. 200 people holding silence like something fragile. We need to talk, he said, forcing steadiness into the words. We're your parents. I turned slowly. For the first time in my life he looked smaller. Not defeated. Just exposed. Whatever he had expected this to become, it wasn't this. You should think very carefully, I said quietly, before you say anything else. And I watched it land. Really land. Because he finally understood something he had avoided understanding for 32 years. This wasn't a girl he could define anymore. This wasn't a daughter he could minimize in front of an audience and have it feel like truth. The story he had been telling had stopped working in real time. And now he was standing inside the gap where it used to be. I turned away. And for the first time that night no one followed.